Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Audit and Finance Standing Committee meeting for January 19th, 2023. It is 1:30 in the afternoon. My name is Paul Russell, and I represent Lower Sackville, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd also like to acknowledge that the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional and unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of December 14th, 2022. Thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon, for moving the acceptance of those minutes. Thank you, Councillor Stoddard, for seconding it. Are there any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. All in favor of the minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great, thank you. That passes. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions for the meeting. Can I have a motion to approve the order of business, please? Thank you, Councillor Cleary. A seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Lovelace. Over to the clerk. Are there any changes for the order of business today?
Thank you, Chair. The clerk's office did not receive any requests for additions or deletions today.
Okay, thank you very much, Annie. Are there any requests for change from the committee? Not seeing any. All in favor of the order of business as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great. Thank you very much. Business arising out of the minutes. There is none. Call for declaration of conflict of interest. Not seeing any. The next items are motions of reconsideration, motions of rescission, consideration of deferred business, and notices of tabled matters, all of which are none. Correspondence. Do we have any correspondence for today's meeting?
Thank you, Chair. There's been no correspondence received.
Okay, thank you very much, Annie. And do we have any petitions?
Thank you, Chair. There's been no notification of any petitions to the clerk's office.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any petitions from members of the committee? And I don't see any, and we have no presentations today, no information items brought forward. So we are on to our first order of business, which is item 12.1.1, the follow-up review of outstanding recommendations for the 2017 and 2019 audits. And I'd like to welcome our Auditor General, Evangeline Coleman-Saad. The floor is yours. I understand you have a presentation.
I do. Good afternoon. I almost said good morning. I'm so used to this being in the morning. If the clerk's office could share the presentation, or do I need to set play? Thank you. I keep forgetting that part. There we go. So this report follows up recommendations which were still outstanding when we did our initial follow-up work on audits that had been completed in 2017, 18, and 19. There's 5 audits: management of drinking water safety, management of surplus buildings and land, procurement, management of development approvals, and Halifax Transit bus maintenance. So this slide shows the status. So after the previous follow-up work, there were 8 recommendations that were still outstanding from the 5 of those audits. 1 rec is still outstanding, but the remaining have been completed. The 1 outstanding recommendation relates to the management of surplus buildings and land audit, and that recommendation was to establish leases or facility agreements with outside groups that occupy municipal-owned properties, and it's really a historical item. At the time, management accepted the recommendation, but commented that many of those situations predate amalgamation. They're so old. So leases or usage agreements that would clearly lay out the rights and responsibilities of both parties is what we're looking for in that instance. And we will follow up that recommendation again in the future to determine whether it has been addressed. The remaining recommendations were completed. Some examples of the types of recommendations those were: Halifax Water needed improved information related to long-term capital needs. Procurement made improvements, including quality control checks on its files. Planning and Development also put quality control checks in place related to development approvals. And Halifax Transit developed standard repair times. That's not an all-inclusive list, but it sort of gives you a sense of what some of the recs were. We will continue to follow up recommendations from a typical audit report, and then we will also continue with following up ones that were not implemented after 18 months. And essentially, I'll just group audits and recommendations together until we have what I see as a reasonable amount to tackle from a workload perspective. But likely 18 months to 2 years afterwards, we will follow up again. The next follow-up of this nature will include 4 audits: payroll management, road and sidewalk asset management, the LED streetlight conversion project, and fleet vehicle use, car allowance, and mileage. And of course, our typical follow-up work will continue, where we revisit recommendations after 18 months. And as I've stated in the past, our goal is that 80% of those recommendations will be complete at that time. I expect the next follow-up review will be released in February, so in a month's time, and it will follow up 2 audits: building permits and inspections, and the Halifax Regional Police Information Technology audit. And that's really it for my comments, although I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Evangeline. Go ahead, Councillor Hensby.
Thank you very much, and Happy New Year to you. One question I have: when you do your LED streetlight conversion review, a follow-up, could you follow up on the status of what I call the ghost lights or the gray lights, the discrepancy between the Nova Scotia Power inventory versus our inventory? There's some lights out there that they're not on Nova Scotia Power billing accounts, nor are they technically listed with our public roads and right-of-way areas, but we have a number of these lights that are out there that could be on municipal properties like recreation properties. I have a few of them in my district that I keep badgering our department about in regards to getting these lights straightened out. A lot of these lights could have been put in when we had the streetlight area rates and stuff, and we had back then the councils had more of the discretion of where the lights were to be put, and now it's not the case anymore. But anyway, it's more of a staff review and stuff. We got to plead and beg with them to get a light in a particular spot. But anyway, I just know that there's been an outstanding issue between the Nova Scotia Power inventory and our inventory, and the lights that are not being determined. So I don't know if that'd be a part of your review, but it's a part of the conversion project. They had to do a full inventory of where all the lights were and determine who owns what. But there are some lights out there, the ownership's not been determined yet. Thanks.
Thank you. So the LED project will be following up the recommendations that were made when we originally did that audit. I can't say I recall all of them offhand, but my recollection is that it did not address that issue, so the follow-up in this instance wouldn't either. That would sort of only come around if we were auditing something that looked at that area again, because follow-up is entirely directed at whether or not management has implemented the recommendations that we had previously.
All right, well, I'll ask it during the budget process then. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Can I please ask for a motion for someone to forward this report to the to Regional Council as an information item? Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Stoddard. Councillor Daigle-Gammon, you had your light on for a second. You're good? Okay. Are there any other questions for the Auditor General? Go ahead, Councillor Lovely.
Thank you so much. Being a councillor for an area where we have been struggling with some of these pre-amalgamation community facilities and land, I think it's important for folks to understand how long-standing some of these buildings have been and some of the arrangements that the community members have had. So it does take time to come to an agreement, and I just want to say that I appreciate the work that your office is doing because it's important for us to be cognizant of the fact that we've got to get this work done, but we also have to do it in a gentle way for some of these community groups that, have invested an awful lot of time and energy, effort, and money into the community. And so I just wanted to ask you from from your perspective, while I understand that this is still outstanding, I would think that, you're quite positive that this is coming to an end quite soon.
I'm not sure on that front. I think that would be a question for management. The management of surplus buildings and land, I'm pretty sure was the first, if not one of the first, probably the first audit that I released when I came into this role. And so it's from November of 2017. So it's been floating around for
Yeah.
quite a bit
Yeah.
already as a recommendation. This
Yeah.
is the second time, like these would have been followed up before, and that one was outstanding, and it is still outstanding. So in terms of whether there's any momentum on it at this stage or not, I don't know. I think that would more be a
Okay.
question for management.
No, I can appreciate that, and I can
Yeah.
also assure you that there is, because in my 2 years in this seat, we've been moving forward with getting those agreements in place.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lovelace. Thank you again, Evangeline. All in favor of the motion to move this forward to Regional Council, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great, that motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 12.2.1, investment activities for the quarter ending September 30, 2022. There is no presentation associated with this report. However, Renee Towns, the Director of Revenue and the Treasurer, and Vicki Robertson are with us today. So if there are any questions, go ahead, Councillor Cleary.
Happy to move that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee forward this report to Halifax Regional Council as an information item. Just a quick question, if staff want to come forward. So, when you look at, the very conservative approach we take to this in terms of, obviously liquidity and preservation of capital, but also we want to make some money on this too, so we can, be efficient and effective with having some cash laying around. We are doing well relative to the benchmarks. In the last 3 months, I've seen sort of things converge a little bit more with kind of the median. However, I also noted that, I'm trying to remember what page it was on, there was a substantial surplus over what we had originally budgeted, and it was in the, I want to say 4 or 5 million range. I could be wrong, but I can't find it now. Can you just speak to kind of what we budgeted for? Because I know we had revised that budget number, and now it seems we bested it again, which is great. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a great thing. Just explain how we did so well relative to what we originally budgeted.
Vicki Robertson, Deputy Treasurer. I guess through you, Mr. Chair, to the Councillor, I guess what I would say is the Bank of Canada has been rapidly increasing the rate of return, the overnight rate. It started beginning of, I think it was March 2022, is about 0.25, sitting at about 3.75 now. During the quarter, it actually went up 1.75%. So as a result of that, we were able to increase our projections.
And so, I mean, if you look on, it's on page 3, the graph going back to 2019, 2020, you could see the precipitous drop in interest rates, the very, very gradual increase, and then in the last, since May of last year, that stepwise increase of rates. And so just in the last quarter or so, you're saying that was a major increase with the rates, and therefore, just given how much money we had and that increase, that was responsible for that very large jump.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the Councillor, yes, the drop that you see in 2020 was a result of COVID. We actually reinvested around that time, so our higher rates of interest on those products would have been sold off. We would have reinvested at lower rates, and then over the period of the last 2 years, every time we reinvest, those rates are going up, and we will continue to see that, we anticipate, for the next few months.
Well, hopefully, just in the looking at the other side of the coin now for consumers and businesses and others, I hope the rates don't go up anymore. I think we're good now. And so I'm happy to, earn those returns and not much more than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Vicky. And just to Councillor Cleary's question, investment income is one of the bright spots in our budget this year. I think the overall increase is about 7 or 8 million over last year, which certainly helps. But I will caution, as the way the economy is heading, those rates could fall and normalize, and which our investment income would drop as well. So we need to keep an eye on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And go ahead, Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being new to this committee, I am really pleased to have this report. I'm excited to be a part of this committee, and the more I learn about the finance and auditing process, the more confident I am about how we're running this municipality. I have a quick question for staff on reserve funds. And this kind of follows up through what we just heard from the Auditor General. As we move forward with these operational agreements with community groups and facilities and so on, one of the things that I've been asked about is the reserve funds for the MDFs, and whether or not those reserve funds are if those are considered investments by the municipality, or how that works for the MDFs, and whether or not they can actually use sort of the surplus funds that they have right now to be depositing that, let's say, in a GIC for themselves. And so, and specifically, I'm speaking of the St. Margaret Centre. And so I'm curious to know whether or not the reserve fund for that MDF is actually included here in this report. Yep, it's on.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, this report actually deals strictly with operating investment income. Although reserves are part of our overall funding, or our overall fund where we do attract interest, I could not speak to your specific question about MDFs.
Okay, yes, I guess that they would probably be capital fund reserves then, would they not? Oh, and there's Renee.
Hi there, Renee Towns, I'm the treasurer, through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. Thanks for your question. So each of the MDFs, depending on how they're structured, they may have their own bank account, but for the most part, the bank accounts are held by HRM. So where the bank accounts are held by HRM, the cash is included in what we invest.
Okay.
And so, yeah, so we do the investments on behalf for those MDFs that we manage bank accounts for.
Excellent, that's
Yes.
what I was trying to get at. Thank you so
Yeah,
much, I
no
appreciate
problem.
that, thanks. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Lovelace. Go ahead, Councillor Hensby.
For those who may be watching the multiple district facilities, I believe acronyms may not be known by everybody, all right? In regards to the other side of the coin, in regards to the bank rates going up, it helps with our investment portfolio, but on the other side of the coin, when we need to borrow money for our capital debtness, how are we projecting our so-called balance between our income versus our expenses on future rates? Are we projecting our upcoming budget process? Are we projecting a particular bank rate at the present time, or are we just using today's rate now and hopefully it won't go any higher? Are we adding any margin of error of another point or two? So it's like curious.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. Thanks for that question, Councillor Hensby. So we do take a look at the longer term, the rate structure that we expect to be in place, and we do factor that into the budget as far as for principal and interest repayments.
And some of our other debts that we had that are retiring, I'd assume some of them were at higher rates, and hopefully when we refinance, they'll be hopefully at lower rates than they have been in the past. Like, I'm kind of curious, what is our lowest debenture out there? What is our oldest debenture out there that we have still paying on?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, I'm afraid I'd have to look that up and get back to you.
Okay, just kind of curious of where we're at with our debentures and what rates are being paid at, so kind of curious to see that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hensby, and thank you to the two treasurers. I don't see any further speakers on the list. Are we ready for the question? Question's been called. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. There is nothing from the Grants Committee. There is nothing from members of Standing Committee. There are no motions. We do have an in-camera item, which is the approval of the minutes of December 14th, 2022. Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Thank you, Councillor Lovelace, for seconding that. All in favor of the minutes, of the in-camera minutes from December 14th, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Great, that passes. There are no added items. Notices of motion. Not seeing any. The next item on the agenda is public participation, and as of 4:30 p.m. on Wednesday, January 18th, there were no registered speakers. We also had the sign-up sheet outside chambers today for the meeting. So since there were no registered speakers, I'll just remind people that if you would like to speak at an Audit and Finance Standing Committee meeting, you are able to. We do have this public participation forum for that. Just come down to City Hall and sign up, or show up in chambers, and we will ask any member of the public who would like to speak to step forward. So, are there any members of the public in the gallery who would like to come forward and address the Audit and Finance Standing Committee? Are there any members of the one member of the public is shaking his head. Are there any members of the public who would like to come forward and address the Audit and Finance Standing Committee? And third and final time, are there any members of the public who would like to come forward and address the Audit and Finance Standing Committee? Thank you very much. Not seeing any. Councillor Hensby, go.
Mr. Chairman, as your role as chairman of the Committee of the Whole budget process, with the pending storm tomorrow, are we having any storm preparations?
That is a great question. We made the decision earlier today because of the weather tomorrow to have tomorrow's meeting virtually. This will be updated on the HRM website. And we will have notification going out to staff and to council. It went out a minute ago. There we go. Thank you very much for that question, Councillor Hensby. The date of the next meeting is to be determined. We have a conflict with Monday, February 16th. Sorry, not Monday, February 16th. That's moving February 16th. We have a conflict with the February 16th date, so we will be looking at the date, and we will advise the committee and members of public in plenty of time when the next meeting will be. So with that, can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Thank you, Councillor Lovelace. We stand adjourned.